30 is not the deadline, it is the start line. When I was in my 20s, I basically suffered a full-blown quarter-life crisis. And I really kind of internalized the age of 30 as like a deadline. And I ended up issuing my then boyfriend with a marriage ultimatum. I did not get my dream of being engaged by the time I turned 30. I didn't tick any of the boxes, in fact. I turned 30 with no ring on my finger. I had no money in the bank, no sense of direction. Now I define success as a feeling. Real women continue to prove that there are no deadlines on dreams. I'll be happy when I've got this money. I'll be happy when I meet my person. I'll be happy when I'm married. We can't be happy when, we need to be happy now. There's a mental health crisis amongst young adults. Is the lowest of any generation to date. It's incredibly terrifying. Gen Z was a generation of young people on which we experimented. At a time when their brains weren't even fully formed, they were exposed to this really unsafe, really quite toxic online environment. I'm getting DMs from 18, 19-year-olds saying, I'm running out of time, I'm losing my looks. Society lies about aging. We actually get more confident, competent, and happier. Life genuinely does get better with age. It's basically BS that your 20s are the best days of your life. They're actually some of the least happy, most anxiety-ridden days of your life, and the data shows that, it proves that. Depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future,
yes,
and happiness is living in the present.
I'm here today with Kate Berski, who is the author of 30 Phobia. Kate, will you be able to dive straight in and tell us what your amazing new book is all about?
Hi Lindsey, thanks for having me. So my name is Kate Berski. I'm an entrepreneur turned writer and content creator, and I've just launched my first book, which is called 30 Phobia. Even though I've just turned 40 myself, when I had the opportunity to write a book, because I sold the company I founded with my husband 2 years ago, I went back to a time in my life that was really pivotal in my kind of development and my growth. So when I was in my 20s, I basically suffered a full-blown quarter-life crisis. I believe that if you don't have a quarter-life crisis, you have a midlife crisis. So I've probably averted the second. But I think, you know, what happened to me is what happens to a lot of women in their 20s. And I think, you know, throughout our early adult life, we sort of go along following this expected timeline. We almost have an internalized timeline, a checklist of things that we need to achieve, and we're kind of going along. And it's things like, you know, you finish your education, you get a degree, you meet your person, you save some money, you buy a place, you get your dream job, you get established in your career, you get loads of money, whatever it is. We're kind of going along trying to tick all these boxes. And I thought I was tracking pretty well until my mid-20s, until I started basically looking around at what my friends were doing and what they were achieving, and also, you know, looking on social media and scrolling and doing that compare and despair. And suddenly about the age of 29, I thought, I'm not going to tick a single one of these boxes by the time I turn 30. And I really kind of internalized the age of 30 as like a deadline. And I internalized it to the point of panic. And, you know, it kind of, my 30 phobia, as I've termed it, kind of culminated when I was about 29. And I was in a long-term relationship, but there wasn't really any commitment. And I ended up issuing my then boyfriend with a marriage ultimatum. Super cool. And, you know, that marriage ultimatum was politely declined. We did not get married. I did not get my dream of being engaged by the time I turned 30. I didn't tick any of the boxes, in fact. But what happened with that kind of hard stop is it made me have a long, hard chat with myself and finally start to question where that timeline had come from, where all my expectations about where I should be in my life by that age, by that milestone age, had come from, and actually question what I wanted, and rather than just looking at what society expected or what other people were doing. And I think that was a massive turning point. I kind of realized that 30, this deadline that I'd held up in my head as the time when I needed to have all my shit together, wasn't a real deadline. It was a kind of societal construct. And nothing was actually going to happen. Nothing did happen when I turned. I didn't die. A bomb didn't go off. Mm-hmm. I turned 30 with no ring on my finger. I had no money in the bank, no sense of direction. You know, I was living in a damp flat. I did not even own a car. And what was crazy is, you know, a decade made so much difference. So I'm writing my book now with the benefit of a decade of experience and, you know, a whole lot of mindset shifts that have helped me kind of come to a much more aligned place in my life at the age of 40 than I was at the age of 30. So I think my work is all about helping particularly young women overcome those pressures that they feel to get all their ducks in a row by a certain age, because 30 is not really the deadline. For most of us, it's actually the start line. It's the start of building a life that really fits us, and not the life that society or other people expect of us. And that's definitely a journey I've been on over the last decade.
I think it's so true. Like, when I reflect back, I was pregnant at 27. I was already married, so I was pregnant at 27. And then I sort of had this feeling after I had my daughter. So I went down into like a spiral, like, oh, I'm not happy, but I didn't really know why I wasn't happy. And because I was really fortunate in my life and my marriage and things like that, everyone would sort of say all the reasons why I was so lucky to have the life that I had. And it's like, no, it's not that. I can't actually quite put my finger on it. There's just a feeling inside me that I can't shift, but I feel really sad. I feel really down, feel really unfulfilled. And I was doing jobs that I didn't really want to do. I was doing it, but then I ultimately didn't have the fulfillment alongside it. And I think that it was because I didn't know what I wanted to do, because I felt like that you're supposed to have your shit together. When you leave school, you leave education, you go into your job, and then you stay there forever until the day you die. And I'm a bit like a butterfly. I just like to try different things and see if I like it. If I don't, okay, I've tried it, next thing. Whereas I think there's a bit of association with coming across as fickle. Oh, you can't stick at one thing. It's like, no, I've just not found the thing that I want to stick to yet. And the things that I want to talk about is that being okay. And that's like really what we're here for, and to be on this planet, to try and explore and experience everything, to see what it is that you want to do. And if you don't have that idea of what you want to do yet, it is okay. And I now, looking back, that feeling of unfulfillment was because I really didn't have a purpose. I didn't know what my purpose was. So how I now know what my purpose is now. I want to help people. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I want to collaborate with other women and just people that have that zest for life to help other people as well. We're all on this like journey of life, aren't we? We're all trying to navigate it, and no one has the answers. And I know how I got to my sort of moment. So how did you get to yours, really?
Yeah. I mean, I love that you shared that squiggly success story, because I think that is every woman I know who is really kind of living her best life has been on that squiggly journey as well. And I think in the past, I used to define success as a series of accomplishments, a tick list that you could almost reel off in like an intro on stage. Now I define success as a feeling, and I am collecting experiences, not achievements. And I've had the most incredible experiences. But I can also attribute, the shift in my life to, a series of mindset shifts, really. And this is the kind of internal work I started doing at 29, 30 when I had my quarter life crisis. And it's what I've continued doing and researching throughout, my book project. And basically I've boiled it down to 4 steps or 4 shifts that everybody can make if they're feeling stuck or confused or misaligned or anxious. And the first step is about stopping looking out. So, especially when we're younger, I think we look outside ourselves to other people, to society, to social media for inspiration and for validation. So as soon as we stop looking out, and step 2, start looking in and actually start tuning into what our own wants and needs are and how we're really feeling about things and the things that we believe will really fulfill us, letting go of the societal expectations and the external pressures. If we can tune into what we really want and need, we stand a much better chance of kind of creating a more aligned and happier, more fulfilled life. So it's about stopping looking out, starting looking in. It's about reframing the way we see goals, which I've done a lot of work on myself, and I've learned a lot from the incredible women I've interviewed for my book project. And one thing that really stuck in my mind was about reframing and moving away from this milestone mentality that we're trained to have from a young age, this kind of mega milestones, these big goalposts that we're aiming for, those big ticket items like getting married, having a baby, buying a house, getting a promotion, whatever it is, all those kind of big ticket items. Moving away from that milestone mentality and starting to embrace a more process positive approach to life. So actually, all the research and data shows that process goals, that is behavioural goals that you can commit to and stick to, that are smaller, more achievable, are much more effective than milestone goals. So it just makes intuitive sense to me. If you say, I'm going to lose 1 stone in weight, that just sounds like an impossible task. How on earth am I going to do that? That tells me nothing about how I'm going to get to that goal. Or if you say I'm going to, get a 50 grand pay rise, well, how on earth am I going to get there? That's actually really stressful and really demotivating. Far more motivating, far more helpful to break it down and be like, okay, I'm trying to get to that financial goal, let's say. Much better to break it down into small, achievable, process-led goals. So I'm going to commit to 2 or 3 behaviours that I can control to get myself towards that goal. So, I'm going to start applying for jobs where I might get paid a little bit more. I'm going to start networking with people who are doing the kind of jobs I'm looking for in the future. Those things are much more in our control and are much more likely to get us there. And it works for everything, whether it's trying to find a relationship or trying to get, to a financial goal, whatever it is. So it's about moving away from milestone mentality to process positive. And the final step for me is about celebrating the small wins. Society and we as people are very good at celebrating the big wins, but we're not very good at celebrating the everyday little small wins that people do all the time. And it almost invalidates those people that are working really hard and trying really hard, living unconventional or non-traditional life paths. We're kind of dismissing all of those achievements. What about, instead of celebrating engagements and babies, celebrating a year of sobriety or a year of being happily single, breaking up from a toxic boyfriend, starting a business instead of selling a business. So it's really about embracing those small wins as well. And I've kind of applied these 4 steps to every area of life in my research and the content I create and the book I've just written. And I'm trying to live my life that way as well. But we're all a work in progress.
I think it's very true. And this is all the stuff that you cover in the book, and which, the other thing I think when I reflect on the thing that switched for me is realizing the amount of times people tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing based on milestones or do you know what really bothers me? And I've never noticed it before until I've turned 30, had a kid, is the amount of times people will say to me, you should not be doing that because you are a mother, or you're nearly 40, or you're married, or you shouldn't be wearing this because of... And for example, like I was in Ibiza in the summer with my husband, and we like to go and party, go and do a day party somewhere, have fun. And we posted a clip, we posted a photograph with a few of our friends, and the comments that we got on it was like, you shouldn't be out and about. It's embarrassing. It is so cringe that you're out partying, trying to hold on to your youth. You need to grow old gracefully and stop trying to relive your youth. Just be happy with your age that you're at now. And actually, isn't it fascinating, the fact that someone who was looking at us, having a good time in the age that we are right now, being present in the age that we are right now, enjoying the party that we're at right now with the friends that we're with right now, to somebody else that's seen as that we're trying to relive our youth. I don't want to go back to my youth. Like when I look back at like clubbing and stuff, it was silly. And also I was so like in my head, I was sort of always like I felt because of the partner I was with at the time that I have to be a certain way or to look a certain way, and I couldn't be seen dancing or going out because of how that might look to him. And I'm more free now and I'm just having fun, but I don't like this association with you need to stop doing those things because you're older. And it's like, who's putting an expiry date on having fun and being free? So there's the flip side of that in terms of, we have all these milestones that we feel like society makes us feel that we should be achieving, but also there's the flip side of you should stop doing those things now because you've hit that age. So is there anything, does that affect you? Have you ever thought about that side of it at all?
Yeah.
And has it affected you?
Yeah, it affects us all. I mean, do you know how many times you said the word should in that
That's
phrase?
what I mean. That word really pisses me off. Can I just say, I had someone sort of quite recently tell me something I was wearing. They were like, oh, maybe you should wear this next time. And I was just like, and I thought she got me on a day when I was like, No, you don't get to say that to me. And I said, do you know what? I'm wearing this because that's what I want to wear. If you want to wear something like that, I'm really happy for you to wear that. But I'm wearing this because that's what I want to wear. So I encourage people, and I'm even trying to instill it into my 9-year-old. When you get older, obviously it's different as a child, but when you get older, you're going to have a lot of people that are telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing, what you should and shouldn't be feeling. Just that's all noise. You tune it out and you tune into yourself. How do you feel? What do you think that you should be doing? Don't let anyone tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. Because I think it's just projection a lot of the time. And it comes from a place of insecurity when people are saying that to you. You know, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. Should be in a box. No, there's no box. There's no ceiling. And as we've established, and we spoke a lot about this on the podcast, there's no rules with anything.
Yeah.
They're just what have been put on us, but actually there's no rules. How is the flip side of that sort of affected you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I really feel like we need to go on a campaign to ban the word should. We need to stop shoulding all over women. We need to stop shoulding all over ourselves because it's not helpful. And all the word should indicates is an external expectation, an external tradition. It is nothing to do with me. If you're shoulding on me, that's you, that's not on me. So, I mean, all the work I do is really about, exactly as you said, tuning out the external noise, tuning in to your internal wants and needs and drives, and that is really the way. And I think we get much better as women as we get older at validating ourselves rather than seeking external validation. So the more you seek external validation, the more affected you're going to be by the shoulds. So a lot of the kind of advice I give is all about kind of tuning that out and tuning back in. You know, what really is it that makes you happy? If we talked about finding purpose, for example, earlier, if you're not quite sure where you want to go with your life, well, what is it that makes you forget to kind of eat, drink and scroll? What is the thing that enables you to tune out anything else and not feel like switching on the telly or going on Instagram? For me, that was writing. That was always writing, where if I was writing and I was in the zone, I was in flow and nothing else mattered. And that's how I knew when I finally had the space in my life and the financial security to take a year off without being paid. That is when I knew I was going to write. So I would urge everybody to do the same. You know, if you're, and don't worry about getting paid yet. Just do what you love and the money follows. And like you say, keep trying things out.
So I have recently been doing a lot of talks with women. And what I find really interesting when we talk about this milestone with age is some women or some people will say, oh, I hit this milestone and I've just flipped the switch. And, I think it comes with age. So this is a common thing. And I don't know whether you agree or disagree. I personally disagree. But I'm interested in hearing your version because obviously you've been researching it for years and you've got the stats to back it up. But from my opinion, I've known a lot of people over the years, all different ages, that still haven't figured out what they want to do or figured out who they are as a person and project. And, they've come and gone over the years. And I would argue that it's not necessarily an age thing. I think it's more a self-awareness thing or willingness to go inward. And I think sometimes a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to open the Pandora's box to see what's hiding in there or maybe holding them back in certain situations. And I think it's important to say that because I don't want people to listen to this thinking, oh, right, well, I don't have my shit together now at 30, but when I reach 40, I hear other people going, oh, well, you'll just sort of wake up one day going, oh, yeah, I'm 40 now. Yeah, it's all bollocks. I want to sort of say, like, yeah, it might happen, but it might not happen as well, and that's okay. So what does your research show and the statistics behind it?
Yeah. I mean, so firstly, I would agree with you. Whenever I put something up on my Instagram and say, life gets better with age or whatever, people are like, yeah, but only if you do the work. So there is a big caveat if you do the work, if you do the internal work. That being said, though, there is a lot of data and research that shows that life genuinely does get better with age. There's a piece of research called the happiness curve, which shows that our happiness basically dips in young adulthood. So it's basically BS that your 20s are the best days of your life. They're actually some of the least happy, most anxiety-ridden days of your life, and the data shows that, it proves that. So happiness takes a dip in young adulthood and starts to rise again, and it's only really in midlife that we start to get a lot happier, and that's statistically across the board. Whether or not people have done the work, people get happier with age. And even more incredibly, things like body confidence. Statistically, women in their 50s and 60s have much higher body confidence than women in their 20s. So that is not necessarily anything to do with how they actually genuinely look. It's much more about how they genuinely feel. And I think, whether or not you do the work, ideally you do the internal work and the introspection. But I think over time, we do get better at tuning out the external expectations and the opinions of other people, and better at validating ourselves and focusing on our enduring inequalities over our kind of external qualities, which are emphasized a lot when we're younger. So when society stops emphasizing our externals, maybe it makes it easier also for us to look inward and start to look at our inequalities as well.
So I've noticed a huge shift online over the last few years, and that's how I found you online originally, because I was at a place when I was really confused about my milestones and the shouldas, and I should have that ticked off, I should be in this place by this age, I should have my shit together, I've got a kid, I'm married, so that's how I discovered you and your platform. So my algorithm is full of really nice positive stuff. So I am probably in a false illusion that maybe the world is changing and everyone's realizing the society's pressures and social media pressures of having all these box ticked. Do you think there's a shift in social media, or is it just because my algorithm's all nice? What's your opinion? Do you think the social media is shifting that now, or do you think people are just more aware of it? Is it still people are riddled with anxiety in the 20s because they feel like they're not driving the Lamborghini, they're not going to Dubai doing bottomless brunches, and there's this comparison thief? Is it still rife, or do you think it's dying down now?
Yeah, I think the space that we're both in, it might be tempting to believe that everything is turning rosy and lovely, but I think there's still a very dark side to social media. And, there's a mental health crisis amongst young adults. The mental health of people in their teens and 20s is the lowest of any generation to date. And there has been a lot of research done as to why this might be happening, and essentially social media keeps rearing its kind of beautifully filtered head in this problem. So basically they have correlated very strongly the birth of social media and front-facing selfie cameras with the stark rise in mental health problems amongst young people. That is continuing. Unfortunately, Gen Z was a generation of young people on which we experimented at a time when their brains weren't even fully formed and they were still wiring. They were exposed to this really unsafe, really quite toxic online environment, and that's rewired their brains in a really negative way. So there's a brilliant book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt that explains this in much better detail than I can, but it's incredibly terrifying. And I think when those young people come to our corner of the internet, there's this feeling of relief of like, oh, this is a safe space, this is so positive, this is what I want to hear. But it's
not just me that's feeling like that. There's a community of people that are also feeling like that as well.
And I think it is still, this compare and despair culture, it is still rife, even under the guise of inspiration, even positive aging inspiration. When you look at an incredibly toned J-Lo at 50 something and you think, oh God, I'm 30 something or 20 something and I don't look like that, that isn't necessarily that inspirational. And again, so what social media does very well is it shows us the end goals, the end game. So it's really good at giving us like inspo, but it's not very good at helping us get there or finding out how realistic that is, or kind of filtering out the fakeness. So I've got this theory called the expectation gap, and it's basically that the source of almost all of our unhappiness is the disconnect between our expectations out of life or out of certain life events and our experienced reality. And unfortunately, that gap is widening because of social media, because we used to compare ourselves to our prettiest friends, and now we compare ourselves to, the the most amazing supermodels with a million filters and makeup artists. So the expectations of how we're going to look are getting much higher. And when we compare that to our reality, we feel like we're falling short. And that is true for every area, from finance and business and travel, across the board, really. So unfortunately, I don't think it's getting better. The messages I get from young people suggest that it's not, and if anything, this kind of fear of not having figured everything out is kind of getting younger. So I thought, when I first started researching 30 phobia, I thought I was going to be talking to a cohort of 28, 29 year olds. I'm getting DMs from 18, 19 year olds saying, I'm running out of time, I'm losing my looks, I'm past my prime. I'm thinking, gosh, you're barely, you're a baby, you've got so much time and you are doing fine. But they don't get that message. They get the message that they should be hitting the 30 under 30 list next week or something.
Yeah, Forbes under 30.
I know. And with all these like super young TikTokers and, Instagram billionaires, it's all in your face, and it doesn't necessarily make you feel better about where you're at in your life, even though what we're comparing ourselves to is the very rich, very, privileged and lying 1% of the population, not the truth. So a lot of what I do is, and the reason I use a lot of data in my content is because I want to normalize normality, because it's tempting to think you're the only one that's single or broke or haven't found your dream job or haven't found your person or don't have any friends in your 20s. In reality, most of the time you're in the majority. So that's why I like to use a lot of data to kind of reassure rather than to shock people.
I think that's really important. Absolutely. So you're saying like the most people that you're saying that you get messages a lot from 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds. So what are the statistics behind that then? Like what's their thought process and how they're feeling about themselves?
Yeah, so as part of the research for my book, I commissioned a study of 2,500 women in the UK and the US across the board, every walk of life, every income level, ethnicity, gender identity, the whole lot, normal people. And what was interesting is I asked them a whole series of statements and attitudes about where they were at in life and how they felt about things. 61% of women in their 20s agreed that other people find life easier than me. And only about 3 or 4% of women felt they found life easier than other people. So that really fascinated me, because it made me think, okay, we're all going around thinking everyone else has got this sorted out, everyone else knows what they're doing, and I'm the only one who is clueless and failing and flailing and falling behind. But actually, we're all in the majority. So if we're all a bit more honest about how we're feeling and we're struggling, it helps everyone else realise that we're not alone, and this is just a stage of life where we're figuring things out, and that's okay.
I think the other thing as well that's really helped me is to be really present and in the moment. I think when I was younger, it was when I get to this age, it'll all be fine. When I earn this amount of money, it will all be fine. When I look this way, it'll all be fine. And it's that constant reaching for that idea of perfection that stops you being in the moment. And now sort of going, right, it's really hard this time in my life, but I'm going to ride it, I'm going to process it and learn from it, has really helped me and how I feel about myself, and I think most people are just constantly thinking about the future and the next thing. They never enjoy where they are right now and in that moment, because they'll never be as young as they are right now. And I say to my daughter, because she's like, I can't wait until I'm a teenager. And I was just like, Minna, do you know what the secret to happiness is? She was like, what? I said, at every age you ever are, just always enjoy where you are right now. Enjoy the age, the moment that you're in right now. And don't be looking back. Don't be looking in the future. When. Just be really present in the moment. I mean, it just went over her head, but I'm hoping that some might stick,
Yeah.
But I think that's what I've learned is the key to happiness is just be in the moment and enjoy how young I am right now.
Yeah, and it's a really helpful reframe that really just clarified things for me was when I heard someone say, depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future,
yes,
and happiness is living in the present.
And we don't live in either.
Yeah, we live a lot of the time, particularly in young adulthood in our 30s, 40s, we're living in the waiting room. We're living in, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I've got this money. I'll be happy when I meet my person. I'll be happy when I'm married. We can't be happy when, we need to be happy now. And it's not about, having a perfect life and enabling you to be happy now. It's about looking for the joys. It's looking for the small glimmers, the little, wins and, the little joys in life. And it can be simple things. So I completely agree with you.
I totally agree. I think it's so important to celebrate those little wins. And I know that you sold a business. I think it's really important to celebrate your wins and not have the goals as like the end goal. Because what I've realised is I'm about to hit a real milestone in my business. And I'm really detached from it. Like, I'm like, oh, that's nice. But it doesn't, like, I've not got an attachment to it. I don't feel either way about it. It's just like, oh, I'm proud of myself for getting there. But I think it's because I've done the work of that success doesn't like define me. It's not me. So how did you feel like when you sold your business? Was it a huge fit? Like, did you celebrate? Were you quite detached from it? It is what it is. How did you feel when you sold the business?
Yeah, I mean, you might relate to this as an entrepreneur yourself. When you're running it, so my husband and I co-founded a haircare company called Curlsmith in 2018, and the business grew very, very quickly and ended up being incredibly successful. In 2022, it was acquired by an American corporation for what you would see as a life-changing sum of money. And I think when you're building the business, you hold that moment up as the ultimate, the pinnacle of success, and you imagine it a million times in your mind, and you honestly think it's going to be champagne corks. And the psychologists call that the arrival fallacy, the belief that when you reach that certain goal, you are going to be eternally happy and everything's going to be perfect and sailing off into the sunset. Having lived one of those arrival moments, a huge arrival moment, I can tell you that it's not, you know, that the arrival fallacy is really a fallacy. So it was interesting because we had worked incredibly hard to build the business and even harder to try to sell it. It's quite a process. And we always anticipated that we feel this elation when it finally happened. But in reality, it was quite an anticlimax. So we sold to an American company. We got the call about 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night. At the time, my daughter was 2 years old. She had not still slept through the night. You might relate to that. So I was exhausted. My husband was exhausted. We'd been working really hard. And it was quite an anticlimax. It's just kind of got this robotic phone call. And it was like, the deal is done sort of thing. And it was just like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I remember phoning my in-laws, and they're Polish. They don't speak much English. And their first response was not like, oh my God, congratulations. It was like, oh, right, so you guys are unemployed now.
What's next? What are you doing next? It's
yeah.
like, oh.
So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, and then afterwards, we kind of were like, oh, we're going to celebrate tomorrow. And then we got super sick. So we were sick for like a month. I think it was just the release of tension and the relief maybe and all the hard work and finally having a break after 6 years of just working around the clock. And it just never felt. I think we still got the bottle of champagne that we bought ready to pop when we sold that company, and it's 2.5 years later and it's still there in the fridge. So it's really strange. And I think that's having gone through that experience, and we never celebrated throughout the whole time we were building that company. We never celebrated. We were just like, we've achieved that thing, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. You're so busy and you're so goal oriented that you never celebrate the journey, as cliched as that sounded. So when I started my passion project, which is 30 Phobia, I was like, I'm going to celebrate every bloody moment along the way. I'm really going to enjoy this. I'm going to do something I'm really passionate about. I'm going to speak to people that I find really interesting. You know, I'm going to create something that I think is really worthwhile and enjoyable. And I'm going to shout about it all. I'm going to share it all on social media, which is a weird thing to do when you are writing a book, particularly a first-time author. Like, usually people hide away and don't tell anyone what they're doing and then burst out 3 years later with this, I've written a book. I did the opposite. I was like, even if this flops, even if nobody buys it, even if I can't get it to the end, I'm still going to share the failures. I'm going to share it all, and I'm going to celebrate everything. And every single chapter I wrote, I had a little glass of champagne. And when I finished writing the book, I had a whole bloody bottle, because I'm never going to make that mistake again. I'm going to celebrate all the inch stones, not wait for the milestones anymore.
And that's what I love about seeing what you've done over the last few years, is that you're kind of taking everybody on that journey with you. And that's what I want to do. I want to be like, I have no idea where I'm going, but you can come along with me if you want, and we'll just see where it goes and celebrate, and just keep trying and failing, try and figure out what works, what doesn't work. Because I think so many people don't do things because they're so scared of failing and it not working out, so then they won't do it at all.
Yeah.
And I think that more people being honest, going, this is an idea that I'm going to have, I'm going to explore it, see if it works, see if it doesn't, see what comes from it, and taking people on that journey with you gives them the kind of nod and permission that they can do it as well.
Yeah.
She's doing it, well, I can do it too.
That's it. And it also makes things better. I also know from being an entrepreneur that sharing is good. The more you share something, the more feedback you get, the more you craft your idea and your concept. And nobody's going to steal your idea. That nobody's going to be you. No one's going to do it the way you're going to do it.
You've got your secret sauce.
Yeah.
People can try and copy, but they've not got the vision that you've got.
It. And we've been through everything. We've been through worst case scenarios. Somebody trying to steal our idea didn't knock us down. We've had, hundreds upon hundreds of rejections. I love rejection now. I'm really good at getting rejected, actually. So when it came to trying to get my book published, it was just water off a duck's back, on to the next. Thank you for the feedback. That's a gift. Moving on.
So true.
Yeah. So just, my message would be real women continue to prove that there are no deadlines on dreams, that you can start a completely new career at 40, that you can, meet the love of your life at 50. There really are no deadlines on dreams. 30 is not the deadline. It is the start line.
The deadline is when we die. Basically. So obviously I've got a supplement brand, JOLT, which is all about improving people's health span from a cellular level, to help improve longevity and things like that. And this space can be quite toxic with negative aging, and we can't age and we have to look amazing. Like you say, the whole JLo at 53, it's kind of feels unreachable to some people, and that's then how they feel sad about themselves. I have a daughter like you. What are you going to be saying? What are the core sort of messages that you're going to be teaching your daughter so she doesn't feel trapped and get into what society expects from her?
Yeah, I think as a society we focus too much on the external and too much on the negative kind of aspects of aging. But actually most women experience a lot of positive changes when they get older. And it's, I'll be telling my daughter, to focus on, the positive qualities and the benefits of aging. So increased wisdom, competence, more money, better relationships, so many things get so much better when we get older. We get more kind of confident, more competent, wiser. And I just think we need to focus much more on those positives of aging that are genuinely experienced by most women. A couple of weeks ago, I was just scribbling down thoughts on Post-its, basically. And I wrote this Post-it note that said, society lies about aging. We actually get more confident, competent and happier with age. And I was blown away. It went viral. I was blown away by how many people were commenting and sharing it and, DMing me about it, because there are so few positive messages directed at women around aging. And, I really see a shift, a kind of tidal change in society now where women are wanting to hear that positive message about aging. And there are so many great things to look forward to. I don't think any more about aging up. I think about leveling up. So I'm another year older. I'm another year, wiser, more competent, more confident, more secure. I know more about who I am. So I really think the best, whatever age you're at, the best is still yet to come.
Thank you so much. I love that. I learned so much today. And the only way is up, like you say. The best is yet to come, which is such an important message. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.